As promised, today I'm not gonna bore with you some typical chemistry and physics lectures. Um, I have kind of like tried to make it a little interesting today. So the third part is about um, the aircrafts and the type of aircrafts. So we are going to discuss about the very basics, not about some fancy airplanes and the fighter jet, just the basic classification of how we can classify the aircraft. So, and the first objective would be like we would be identifying the three major aerospace manufacturing companies. For example, Lockheed Martin for the fighter jets, the Boeing and the Airbus. So these are like the big companies that manufacture the aerospace products. Explain how a person such as yourself can own part of an airline company. So, the focus point of today's lecture is how are aircrafts classified. To explain the two primary classes of aircraft, that will what we will do today, and discuss the type of heavier, then discuss types of heavier than air aircrafts, identify two types of fixed wing aircrafts. So these are like just objectives of what we are going to do today. What are the two primary classes of aircrafts? And the first one is the lighter than air. The second one is heavier than air. The heavier than air are the typical nowadays the fighter jets, like all of those who cannot float in air and who require some external source to fly. Like I told you in the chemistry part earlier that helium gases are used to in the air balloons. So the first part that contains the lighter than air basically involves that kind of physics and that kind of mechanics. It naturally, without any external source or external power source or an engine, it can fly in the air. The first part. So these are the two primary classes of aircraft. The first one is lighter than air. The second one is heavier than air. So, as I have told you earlier in the chemistry part, that hydrogen was used and it is a flammable gas. And the lighter than air gases, like helium, for example, is used to like keep it aloft in the air balloon or the big aircraft. We will name it later. Eventually, slighter heavier, like helium is very slightly heavier than hydrogen, but it is non-flammable. So eventually we shifted from hydrogen to helium. So this is the second kind of other than hot air balloon, these kind of aircrafts are used as lighter than air aircraft. So the non-rigid one is free balloon or hot air balloon. It has no internal or external framework, has no steering mechanism. It just flies up in the air and floats at some specific point. But the second one is the rigid. It the blimp gas is contained in a fabric covered with wooden or metal framework. A gondola control car is underneath, which carries engines and personals. So this is an example of the free balloon, and this is the example of a blimp. So both of these, they do not require an engine to fly. They fly by the mechanism of having being filled with a lighter gas than air. So in this, the second part, the blimp, like I told you, there was an accident The Hindenburg was a German Zeppelin after a successful passenger flight began across the Atlantic, caught fire while landing in New Jersey in May 1937, and it killed 36 people and injuring many. So it was used, but it was very unsafe. So later on, this technique or mechanism was not used further, and now we have all of the other types of aircraft. It can be the helicopters, it can be the quadcopters, it can be the Boeings or the fighter jets. All of these are heavier than air. So the first one is the rotary wing. In in these type of aircraft, lift is generated by moving blades overhead, which act as revolving wings. Uh, it can be found in a helicopter. It can also be found in a quadcopter, like a drone, or like in any aircraft in which there is a rotary wing and that is rotating to generate the lift. So we can call it the first type heavier than air aircraft. That is, we can generate the lift through rotating the wings. Uh, Autogyro non-powered air-driven blades forward flight is accomplished by use. This is not important right now. The main idea would be sufficient. Like I have told you, the helicopters are the rotary wing aircrafts. So these are powered by rotating blades. Blade may be tilted into any direction to control the flight path. The second one is the fixed wing. Seaplanes, flying boats uses floats or hulls in place of conventional landing gear to take off and land on water. Land planes, there are two kind of planes: fixed wing planes, seaplanes, and the land planes. Land planes classified by the location of wing, landing gear type, etc. All of the fighter jets, most of them, most of the Airbuses, the Boeings, the passenger aircrafts, all of these are land planes. Seaplanes are also used, but they have some special landing gears to take off and land on water. Amphibians, these kind of, basically the A and the C, the amphibians and the seaplanes, they are used mostly by the military purposes. So amphibians can operate either on land, it can land on water also. Uh, so to summarize, there were two primary classes: lighter than air, heavier than air. What are the two types of heavier than air? The first one was rotary wing. The second type was the fixed wing. And what are the three types of fixed wing? The one which can land on land, the one which can land on